Good evening aspirants, welcome to daily newspaper analysis brought to you by Shankar IAS Academy. Today's date is 4th February 2025. So these are the articles we are going to discuss in this video. The first article is taken from Indian Express newspaper. It deals about the preventive detention and AK Gopalan case. The second article is taken from Indian Express newspaper and deals about the cancer types in India, basics of cancer. The third article taken from Hindu newspaper deals about the anti-conversion bill which was recently introduced in Rajasthan State Assembly. The last article is taken from Hindu newspaper. It deals about the forest land and the interpretation of Supreme Court judgment and also about the Forest Conservation Act. So these are the articles we are going to discuss in this video. Let us get into the discussion. Now look at this article. The Supreme Court of India has reaffirmed its stance on the protection of forest land. So the Supreme Court has made it clear to the union and state governments that no forest area can be reduced unless compensatory land is provided for the afforestation. So this is the news. So this statement of Supreme Court was made during the hearing of petitions which challenged the 2023 amendments to Forest Conservation Act 1980. The court also upheld the broad definition of forest which was established in Godavarman case. This case happened in 1996. So in this context, let us discuss about the amendments made to Forest Conservation Act, the basics of this Forest Act 1980 and what does the Supreme Court judgment means to the Forest Act 1980. Firstly, let us see about the Forest Conservation Act of 1980. See, this act was enacted to regulate the forest related laws and to prevent the deforestation. This act also oversees the forest product transportation. As per the act, the government can impose duties on the timber and other forest producers. According to the act, we must get prior approval from the central government for the diversion of forest land for non-forest purposes. So that this act primarily applies to the forest land which is recognized by Indian Forest Act of 1927 or which are kept in the state records since 1980. So this act applies only to the forest land which was recognized by Indian Forest Act of 1927 or which was recognized in the state records, state forest records from 1980. Now let us see about the Supreme Court's interpretation of this Forest Conservation Act of 1980. Supreme Court in 1996 in Godavarman case provided an important judgment. The court mandated the protection of forest irrespective of the classification or ownership. So according to the Forest Conservation Act of 1980, the protection was only given to those forests which are classified as forest under the Indian Forest Act or those forests which are recorded in the state records. But the Supreme Court said that any forest land, irrespective of the classification or ownership, if it is a forest land, then it has to be mandatorily protected. So this is a broad definition of forest which was given by Supreme Court in 1996 Godavarman case. So this introduced the concept of deemed forest. Here deemed forest means the areas which are like forest like areas, and these areas may or may not be officially classified as forest. If the land is seen as a forest, then it has to be protected. It doesn't need to be classified as per the government as a forest. So this is a broad definition of forest which was given by Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court asked the government to protect the forest irrespective of the classification. Whether it is legally classified as forest or not, the government has to protect all the forest area. So this was given by Supreme Court judgment in 1996 Godavarman case. Now what is the concerns regarding the varying definition of forest? Because using the loopholes of the definition of forest, many parties may exploit the forest areas. So if there is a forest land and it is not classified under any forest act or not recorded in the state records, then private parties may exploit it, may destroy it, may use it for other purposes by citing this definition of forest. But that is why Supreme Court has given a broad definition of forest. Now what is the Forest Conservation Act amendment which was made in 2023? So this amendment was made to the original Forest Conservation Act of 1980. So this act was passed in July to August in 2023 and it clarified the scope of forest land and addressed the deemed forest concern. So this amendment to Forest Conservation Act was slightly contrary to the Supreme Court judgment of 1996. So Supreme Court again reinforced that the traditional approach to the forest governance despite the amendments. So the court also said that the government has to get approval from the court for creating zoo or safaris by any government or authority. Now let us see the key provisions of this 2023 amendment to Forest Conservation Act. Now what are the important amendments made in this act? See, the central government has declared that the Indian Forest Act or any other law which recognizes the forest are notified as forest after 1980 are considered as forest land. So all the forest land which are classified as forest after 1980 are protected under this Forest Conservation Act. This is the first point. The second one is, so the land which is converted from the forest use to non-forest use before 1996 are protected under this act. So these are the two kinds of forest land which are protected under this act. Now what are the exemptions provided under this act? See, forest areas which are 0.10 hectares can be used for connectivity along the roads and railways. So 0.10 hectares of forest land can be used for building railways and roadways, and forest land up to 10 hectares can be used for security related infrastructure. Forest land up to 5 hectares can be used for public utility projects in left-wing extremism affected districts, and strategic projects which are within the 100 km of international borders or line of actual control can be exempted under this act. So these kinds of forest areas which can be used for the roads and railways, for security related infrastructure, for public utility projects and along the international borders can be cleared, can be used by the central government without being sued in the court. So these forest areas are exempted from the conservation under the Forest Conservation Act. Now look at the Indian State of Forest Report 2021. The total forest and tree cover in India is 24.62% of India's geographical area, and the total forest cover is 21.71%, and the total tree cover is 2.91%. The state with the largest forest cover in terms of area, number 1 is Madhya Pradesh, which has the largest forest cover by area. Next is Arunachal Pradesh, and the third one is Chhattisgarh. The states with the highest forest cover as a percentage of geographical area, the first one is Mizoram, next is Arunachal Pradesh, the third one is Meghalaya. So in terms of forest cover by area, Madhya Pradesh is a number 1 state in India. In terms of percentage of land, Mizoram is the number 1 state. If you look at the states with the increasing forest cover, Andhra Pradesh stands first, then Telangana followed by Odisha. If you look at the states with the decreasing forest cover, Arunachal Pradesh stands first, followed by Manipur and Nagaland. So these are some of the important points regarding the Indian State of Forest Report and about the forest cover in India. In this discussion, we have seen the basics of Forest Conservation Act of 1980. We have also seen what are the amendments made to this act in 2023 and what are the Supreme Court interpretations of this Forest Conservation Act. So with these basic details, let us look at an MCQ related to this topic. Consider the following statements. As per the recent amendment to India's Forest Act 1927, forest dwellers have the right to fell the bamboos grown on the forest areas. So this is a 2019 prelims question. Now look at the second statement. As per the Scheduled Tribes and Other Traditional Forest Dwellers Act of 2006, bamboo is a minor forest produce. Now look at the third statement. The Scheduled Tribes and Other Traditional Forest Dwellers Act of 2006 allows for ownership of minor forest produce to the forest dwellers. Now which of the statements given above are correct? The correct answer for this question is option B, 2 and 3 only. With this, let us move on to the next news article. Now look at this article. The article highlights the rising incidence of common cancers in India, including all types of cancer. World Cancer Day is observed annually on February 4th, that is today, and the theme for 2025 to 2027 is United by Unite. So in this context, let us discuss about the types of cancers and the common cancers in India. See, cancer is a significant public health challenge in India with increasing incidence due to lifestyle changes, environmental factors, and also due to genetic predisposition. According to Indian National Cancer Registry, the most prevalent cancer in India are oral cancer, cervical cancer, breast cancer, and lung cancer. So let us discuss about these types of cancers in our discussion. First one is oral cancer, and it is common in male. It accounts for 11.28% of all cancers in Indian males. The risk factors include the tobacco use, chewing and smoking of tobacco, alcohol consumption, and poor oral hygiene. HPV infection also leads to oral cancer. The symptoms include persistent mouth sores, ulcers, white or red patches on the mouth. There will be difficulty in chewing, swallowing or speaking, and these are also the symptoms of this oral cancer. So the physical examination, biopsy and imaging using MRI scans can be used to diagnose this cancer. The next one is breast cancer, and this is the most common type of cancer in Indian women, and it accounts for 27% of all female cancers in India. The risk factor include late marriages, low fertility rates, obesity, hormone therapy, and genetic factors are also one of the risk factor for this cancer. The third one is cervical cancer. It is the second most common cancer in Indian women, and the risk factor include HPV infection, multiple pregnancies, early marriage, and poor genital hygiene. The fourth most prevalent cancer is lung cancer, and it is one of the leading cancers in both men and women. The risk factor include smoking, air pollution, occupational hazard like asbestos exposure, etc. It can be diagnosed using the X-ray in chest or CT scan or biopsy. Now, what are the emerging trends and the prevention strategy for the cancer? There is a rising tobacco-related cancer, which is oral cancer or lung cancer, and we need for stricter tobacco control policies. HPV vaccination can also prevent some of the cancers. So HPV vaccination is essential for reducing the cervical cancer cases. Screening and early detection using mammograms, routine checkups can also save lives and avoid cancer. The lifestyle modification like healthy diet, physical activity and awareness campaigns can also lower the risk of cancer. So cancer is a growing burden in India, but early detection and lifestyle modification, vaccination can help reduce the mortality rates. The government initiatives like National Cancer Grid and Ayushman Bharat are important in addressing this challenge. So this is about this news article discussion. Let us discuss an MCQ related to this topic. The National Program for Prevention and Control of Cancer, Diabetes, Cardiovascular Diseases and Stroke, NPCD-CS. This was launched under which mission? So the correct answer is option B, National Health Mission. With this, let us conclude the discussion and move to the next news article. Now look at this article. Rajasthan government has introduced Prohibition of Unlawful Conversion of Religious Bill 2025. So this bill was introduced in Rajasthan State Assembly to curb the religious conversions through force, fraud, inducement or marriage. So the bill was aimed at addressing the love jihad, and the bill also proposes imprisonment of up to 10 years and the fines up to 50,000 for forceful religious conversion. So according to this Prohibition of Unlawful Conversion of Religion Bill 2025, the religious conversions which are done through force, fraud, inducement, coercion or through marriage, which is a love jihad, are banned by this religious conversion bill. Now what are the key provisions of this bill? The bill introduced punishment of up to imprisonment of up to 10 years and fines of up to 50,000 for forceful religious conversion. Any person wishing to convert must inform the district magistrate at least 60 days in advance. So this is a mandatory declaration for any religious conversion. They have to inform the district magistrate at least 60 days in advance before the conversion. The offences under the bill are cognizable, which means the police can arrest without warrant. And the offences under the bill are also non-bailable, which means getting a bail is not a right for this offence. The Congress and opposition leaders claim the bill is BJP propaganda which are aimed at creating societal divisions. The critics argue that religious freedom is already protected under existing laws. So there is no need for a new kind of laws like this. So this is what the critics are arguing about this bill. Now let us see some of the constitutional provisions regarding religious conversion and other related things. Article 25, which deals with the freedom of religion. This guarantees freedom to practice, profess and propagate religion. This also includes the right to conversion. However, the conversions cannot be forced or done through fraud. The state can set a reasonable limits in the interest of public order. Next is Article 26, which is the right of religious groups. This article allows the religious groups to run their own religious institutions and manage their affairs. Next is Article 51A, which comes under the fundamental duties. It encourages citizens to respect all religions and preserve India's diverse culture. So these are some of the articles which are mentioned in the Constitution related to religious freedom. There are also some of the state laws related to religious conversion. Madhya Pradesh has Freedom of Religion Act 1968. It bans conversion which are done by force, fraud or inducement. Orissa has also a Freedom of Religion Act 1967. It is similar to Madhya Pradesh Act. Uttar Pradesh has Prohibition of Unlawful Religious Conversion Ordinance, which is made in 2020, and it requires prior approval from authorities for conversion, especially to prevent the forced conversion in case of marriage. So these are some of the state laws regarding religious conversion. So in this article discussion, we have seen the recent Rajasthan bill which aims to curb the religious conversion. What are the basics of the bill, what are the oppositions, and what are the constitutional provisions regarding religious freedom, and what are the state laws which are directed towards religious conversion. So with this, let us conclude the discussion. Now look at this prelims practice question. Which of the following states was first to pass anti-conversion law to regulate religious conversions through force, fraud or inducement? So which of the following states was the first to pass an anti-conversion law? The correct answer is option D, Odisha. So with this, let us conclude the discussion and move to the next news article. Now look at this article. The article discussed the landmark case A.K. Gopalan vs. State of Madras in 1950. So this case examined the preventive detention and personal liberty in independent India. The article also highlights Mr. Gopalan's imprisonment during independence, his legal battle against arbitrary detention, and its impact on the due process, this later influencing the constitutional jurisprudence on fundamental rights and personal freedom. So in this context, let us discuss about what is preventive detention and personal liberty, and also about the A.K. Gopalan vs. State of Madras case. Now what is preventive detention? It refers to a practice of detaining a person without trial if the authorities believe they may commit offence in the future. So imprisoning a person without bringing him to the court because they may commit a offence in the future. So this is the preventive detention. Punitive detention means arresting and jailing a person who have already committed a crime. So punitive detention means a person is jailed after being found guilty in the trial. Preventive detention aims to stop the crimes before they occur. So this is the difference between punitive detention and preventive detention. Governments often use it for national security, public order or economic stability. So this preventive detention is used by governments mostly for the national security and for securing the public order. Now what are the types of the preventive detention in India? There are two broad types of preventive detention. Under general laws, the Criminal Procedure Code CRPC has section 151 which allows the police to detain a person if they believe they are about to commit a crime in future. Such detention is short term and requires a person to be produced before magistrate within 24 hours. And the next category is under special laws. For example, the National Security Act 1980 allows detention of up to 12 months for the threat to national security or public order. So under CRPC section 151 or under normal laws, a person can be preventive detention up to 24 hours and then he has to be produced before the magistrate. Under special laws like this National Security Act, a person can be kept in preventive detention up to 12 months. Even under Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, that is UAPA Act of 1967, there are more months which a person can experience a preventive detention, and it is used against terrorism and anti-national activities. So these are special laws and these are general laws. So general laws have the power to preventive detention of up to 24 hours, which is a short term, and the special laws have a long term preventive detention. Now looking at the constitutional framework, Article 22, the preventive detention is an exception to the right to personal liberty. The Constitution allows such detention but includes some safeguards to prevent the misuse. According to this article, a person cannot be detained for more than 3 months unless an advisory board reviews and approves it after. So a person can be detained only for 3 months, and if he has to be put it in the preventive detention after 3 months, then he has to be stood before the advisory board, and the advisory board, which is headed by a judge, has to review his preventive detention, and if only it approves the preventive detention, he can be kept in jail more than 3 months. The detained person must be informed for the reasons for which he is kept in the preventive detention. The person has a right to make representation against his detention. So these are three important rights which are mentioned in Article 22 against the preventive detention. Now let us see the judicial interpretation regarding this preventive detention. The most important case is A.K. Gopalan vs. State of Madras. A.K. Gopalan was in jail when India got independence on August 15, 1947. So he was in the preventive detention and he suffered a lot in the jail. And this case is an important landmark case regarding the preventive detention and personal liberty. Supreme Court upheld the Preventive Detention Act of 1950 in this case. It also ruled that the fundamental rights could be restricted by laws passed by the government. So the Supreme Court rejected the idea of due process of law. So this is in the A.K. Gopalan case of 1950. Then in Menaka Gandhi case in 1980, the case overturned the Gopalan case judgment. So it expanded the scope of Article 21, that is the right to life and liberty. The court said that any restriction on personal liberty must follow the due process of law. So it means that the law must be just, fair and reasonable and should respect the personal liberty. So the Supreme Court judgment in A.K. Gopalan case was reversed in Menaka Gandhi case. So in this discussion we have seen the basics of the preventive detention, what is the difference between the preventive detention and punitive detention, and what are the important laws regarding the preventive detention and the constitutional framework for preventive detention. So with this, let us discuss this prelims practice question. Consider the following statements regarding the preventive detention in India. A person detained under preventive detention must be produced before a magistrate within 24 hours. The Constitution of India allows preventive detention for a maximum period of 6 months. The detained person has a right to make a representation against the detention. So look at the first statement. A person under preventive detention must be produced before a magistrate within 24 hours. So this is applicable only for general laws and not for special laws. So this statement is incorrect. The Constitution of India allows preventive detention for a maximum period of 6 months. This statement is also incorrect because according to the Article 22, the Constitution allows the preventive detention only for 3 months. Look at the third statement. The detained person has a right to make a representation against a detention. So this is ensured under Article 22 and this statement is correct. So the correct answer is option B, only 3. With this, let us conclude the discussion. If you like the video, please share it with your friends and don't forget to subscribe to Shankar IAS Academy YouTube channel. Thank you for watching.